Hello, everyone, and welcome to Co-Creation Station, the podcast where we talk about spiritual magic, the law of attraction, and how to best enjoy the journey of life. My name is Collin. I'm a spiritual guide and medium.
My name is Stephanie, and I help people shift away from negative thinking and it transforms their lives.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. If you're listening to the audio version, and thank you so much for watching us. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you do enjoy our show and you feel called to like us and subscribe to us, we would greatly appreciate your support. Well, each week on Co-Creation Station, we discuss a different topic. And this week, because we're recording this on January 3rd, we're going to talk about New Year's resolutions and sort of the larger topic of goal setting in regards to the law of attraction, the art of allowing. If you feel like you're on a spiritual journey, what's the best way to think about or utilize or not utilize goals? So we actually started this podcast just in a casual conversation. I'm like, wait, this is the podcast. Like, I should stop talking because we're talking about what we're going to talk about on the podcast.
And that happens often. We're like,
Yes.
wait a minute. Oh, here's another topic
Hold
for
on.
us.
This is the podcast.
Hit record.
Because Stephanie, you asked me what I did this week, and one of the things I said was I'm working on setting my goals for the year in the different areas of my life. And I've done this with a good friend. We did it a couple years ago. We skipped last year, but I kind of
did you skip last year? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. I just felt like 2020 is just gonna be so smooth and easy. You know, no, I did. I used a similar process and that I had done with the friends for 2020, but I did it on my own. I didn't do it with that person.
Guys didn't do it together.
So I'm working with that same friend again. We're using a slightly different method this year. And I'm having a similar struggle with it. And I really am interested in your take on this because I've heard different things we're both fans of Abraham, whose wisdom is channeled by Esther Hicks. And her videos are very widely available on YouTube. If you don't know what we're talking about, you can just Google Abraham Hicks or Esther Hicks. So I remember her saying a few things, especially in some recent workshops that have been recorded and put on YouTube about goals. And I have a struggle with them, which is that, and I think a lot of people who are in the sort of spiritual realm have this issue, which is like when I set goals, I focus entirely on the fact that it's my actions which I think can be a legitimate part of setting goals, figuring out what does need to happen in order to get them accomplished. But I guess what I feel like American culture in this age that we live in sort of encourages me to write out the steps to accomplishing the goal and not figure in the law of attraction, the art of allowing, or whatever my concept of a higher power is.
Right.
It's really like I should write down. So if I want to write,
I'm doing it all.
Yeah. If I want to write a book, the goal is write a book, and the steps are Collin does research on topic X, Collin does research on topic Y, Collin writes the introduction, Collin writes chapter 1, Collin writes chapter 2, and everything is me, and then we accomplish the goal. Yeah. And I think what I've learned in the last few years is that number one, I need help with almost every goal I want to achieve from other people here, on the earth, physical people.
Yeah.
But also I need help from higher power, my spirit guides, like whatever, I have my own understanding of my higher power. I believe everyone can have their own understanding, but it sort of feels like I take the whole spiritual part out of the equation. And yet,
I mean, that's what we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah. My experience in the last few years has been that the spiritual component is the most important part. Like there's the big goals that I've achieved, such as this apartment in North Hollywood, California that I love. And other things, the car I now get to drive, those things came more from I definitely had actions that were required, but there was sort of like some miraculous magical stuff I can't even really
Yeah.
pin down,
Yeah.
other than to say higher power, law of attraction.
Yeah.
And when I'm writing down my goals for the year, I don't know how to incorporate that, because I feel like I'm doing what I used to do, which is just writing, this is me, 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 and then
Yeah.
I get me to the goal by myself. Sorry, I talked a lot there, but I wanted to
Yeah.
set
And
it up
I
for you so you can talk
and
back.
I think it's really great that we're having this conversation because I think you and I are really good bookends because you are on this end of the bookshelf and you've done the goals, you've done the, like you've done this work with your friend a couple of years and you've created these goals and you've had great success. And then here I am on the other end of the bookshelf and I've written goals in the past and I don't think much of them ever came to fruition.
Mm,
And yet I am living so many things of what I've wanted.
mhm.
And so, and I get a little uncomfortable when people talk about goals because I'm like, I should be, I'm not doing it right, da 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 da. And so to have this conversation where we're both at each end, and I think probably we both want to come more to the center
Mhm.
and be a little more like each other
Yeah.
to some degree and have something that really works for us.
Yeah, and I think there's also a I mean, there's difference, but there's also overlap between the concepts of a vision and the concept of a goal. And I get tangled up in that one too, because for me, a vision is something that my heart and my spirit, my true self, my higher self, however you want to think about it, desires in a healthy way to bring into my life. Um, it's not something that I'm just being materialistic about and I want something just so I can show, my neighbors how rich or awesome I am or something like that.
Right.
But it's like I was having a challenge, for example, a minor one in the great scheme of life, but because I'm also a musician, I have a band, and lugging my equipment around Los Angeles was getting to be problematic, and because I just had a regular sort of sedan car, and it was just I have a gigantic guitar amplifier. It was very difficult to put in there.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get a new vehicle that had enough room for my equipment. And, so that was something that my heart desired. Like I didn't want a
Yeah.
bigger car so I could show off to my neighbors, or like I
Yeah.
could park
Yeah.
next to the BMW and feel good or whatever. It really was more of a, but I did want a nice car. I wanted a car I could feel comfortable in. Before the COVID era in Los Angeles, if you live here, you're just in your car a lot because of the traffic. So I wanted it to be comfortable as well. So like that was something my heart desired. Um, and I think before I had a goal, I had a vision of it, like
Hmm.
I had like like a mini dream, or whatever you want to call it. Like
Yeah.
I was like, it was something from my heart space of just like, man, it would be so
Yeah.
nice,
Right.
just make my life a little bit easier and
So
protect
that's
my
a
guitar equipment.
vision,
Yeah.
desire.
Yeah.
And then the goal. So goals are
Yeah, that's what I'm struggling with. Is like I think there's a difference, but I'm not exactly sure what it is. I'm not sure our
Mhm.
culture has an understanding of the difference. I mean, for me, when I think about vision, the difference is vision for me has the spiritual component. Like it's a desire from my heart, and I believe
Mhm.
that my understanding of my higher power, my, you know,
Right.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
big spirit in the sky, whatever, is with me in that
Yeah.
and is already working with me. As soon as I'm aware that I have the desire,
Yeah.
that higher power is already working with me, and law of attraction comes into
Yeah.
play here
Right.
to help make that a reality.
Right.
I think that's where I struggle with is what's my part in the actions I'm bringing that about. And for me,
Well,
sorry,
what's the goal though? Because so you've talked a lot
yeah,
about vision. So
uh-huh.
okay, so then where does goal come in? What's a goal and how is that different?
I think it's a good question. I mean, I'm not sure there's an absolute answer, but I think where I land on it, I'm really glad we're talking about this, because this is literally like what I'm struggling with as I try to write out my goals, is that it's a more practical um, goalpost milestone where I can tell that I've accomplished my vision. I think like my vision is just, in that example, my vision is a bigger car, a bigger vehicle that's comfortable, that I can afford.
Did you call it a goal at the time when all this was going on?
No. Yeah. I mean, gets into another thing is, I mean, I feel like just like you're saying, I've had a lot, like, well, a better example is this apartment, because this was a goal and
This
it
was
was
a
a
goal.
vision.
Okay. Okay. So it was both.
Yeah.
And
I had a vision.
I think that goals, I think that they're interchangeable,
Yes,
or
they're connected.
yeah, totally. And so,
But the difference for me, it's easier for me to understand that vision goal difference with the apartment, because
okay.
I would say that I started having the vision for the apartment when I first moved to Los Angeles, because which was 2013, because I moved into a 3-bedroom house, which I was sharing with other people, primarily because it fit my budget, my financial budget for the
Yeah.
month. Um, but as soon as I got there, even though it was a perfectly pleasant place and my housemates were fine and we got along and everything, my bedroom was way too small for me.
Mhm.
And the kitchen was a shared area that didn't have enough space for everybody in the house.
Mhm.
And so I had a vision like right away of like, I want my own place.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think that vision, I had that. And I remember talking about it to people
Mhm.
who helped me in my spiritual journey in life
Yeah.
over the years. But I literally lived in that same place for 5 years, I want to say 4 or 5
And
years.
then when did it become a goal?
Became a goal when, because I had a written roommate agreement with the other person I lived with, and she had the ability in the roommate agreement to give me 30 days notice at any point, and I would have to move out. And she very suddenly decided that she needed a whole life change. She got into a relationship. She wanted to downsize her life and all these sorts of things. Um, and so one day she just, I got home and she'd left me a letter, in case we didn't cross paths in person,
Yeah. Yeah.
saying you need to be moved out in 30 days.
No.
So that's when I had a goal.
Okay.
And that's when I had to work with the people who helped me on my spiritual manifesting stuff.
Right.
And they helped me clarify the goal.
Yeah.
Like they helped me say like
So
where.
there was a sense
Yeah,
of urgency. So here, okay.
yeah,
So in this
that's true.
goal,
Hmm.
there was urgency.
Yeah.
And what else? Anything else?
I mean, I
Well,
think that,
desire was there.
yeah, the desire was there. I mean, I think you're covering this with urgency, but I guess it's that I got a signal from spirit or higher power or whatever, the universe, however you want to think about it, that it was time for me to take action towards the vision. So I think that was why it became a goal for me, is because when I think of goal, I do think of like, I guess I'm thinking about the end result that I want to see, but I'm also thinking like about what's involved on my side,
Well, it almost
in
seems
terms
like
of
it's
action.
a timeline too. So there's
Yes.
so I want this specifically within a certain amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that's a universal for everyone. I think some people can just be like, I want to get my college degree, but I don't know how many classes I'm going to be able to take each semester because I'm working a full-time job. So it might not have a hard target, but I know in a lot of the I've read a ridiculous and watched a ridiculous amount of personal development books and TED Talks and videos and
On goals specifically.
yeah, on
Yeah.
goals. I mean, the personal development world is obsessed with goals. I mean, I think in a positive way for a lot of people, but I think it's also frustrating for people who don't have the spiritual component, because they feel like it's all up to them. And a lot of these personal development people, despite how I think a lot of them are very authentic and honest,
Mhm.
they just come across as like superstars that can do anything in their books and videos. And so
Mhm.
I think a lot of people, I mean, I know this has happened for me, like we get all inspired at the beginning
Yeah.
because we're like, oh, well, this person had a rough life like me, and this
Yeah.
person overcame challenges, and this person has a big house and a big car, and I
Yeah.
can do it too.
Yeah.
And then I forget, Michael Hyatt, who's a personal development guy. He has a thing called like it's like the diminishing returns phenomenon or something. Like when you, like as humans, we sort of naturally, when somebody asks us to get involved in a new big bold idea, we tend to get very excited.
Yeah.
We also have this sort of delusion that we'll have that level of excitement throughout all the way to the end. And what
Yeah.
actually ends up happening is that quite often your motivation decreases over time.
Right.
So I think that has definitely happened for me, where I get all excited
Oh, that's
for
happened a
development.
gajillion times for me. Like
Yeah,
that was my pattern for
yeah,
years.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
High,
yeah,
high, high, high.
yeah, and you
High,
end
high,
up
high.
getting, yeah, and like I end up getting,
Crushing. It's soul crushing.
yeah, it ends up getting very discouraging. Like I've definitely had periods where I don't want to set goals because I'm like, well, I've set them before. I think what I kind of know deep down is like, I don't follow through. Like I get all excited at the beginning and then I
Yeah.
don't follow through.
Yeah.
This is the story of many people's New Year's resolutions, right? You know, they go to the gym for the first week
Right.
and then, you know, they're paying for the membership for 6 months, but they never go again.
And I always like to say I was the hare. Get excited about something. Yeah, it's gonna happen. And then I just peter out and I'd go on to something else. And I'd never cross the finish line.
Yeah.
And what's happened over time is I've become the turtle, where it's like
Yeah.
little tiny baby steps.
Yeah.
And I've crossed the finish line more times being the turtle, little tiny baby
Yeah.
steps, than I ever did when I was the hare, super excited. I'm going to make this, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then it wouldn't happen in the timeline I thought. I'd
Yeah.
get discouraged. I'd feel bad about myself, whatever. And then I'd just go on to the next bright, shiny thing, or not even bright, shiny thing, but something that has inspired me and made me feel
Yeah.
alive and again. And so,
Yeah. So I think, yeah, I mean, and when you talked, I just wanted to go back to something you said, because you said what you were trying to notice things about that difference between vision and goal with me getting my apartment, and you mentioned the time specificity, and I think that is something that most of the personal development books and authors and speakers I've read, they talk about the SMART goals, which is specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time targeted or something, so that there's a deadline for everything. And so I mean, that's definitely one of the recommendations. But I'm not sure, like, I think you can have a goal without a time target, but I think it is easier to manage if you have a time target, because then you have like feedback on yourself of like, did I hit this? If the different steps have time targets, I want to finish the research on the first topic for my book, by the end of January 2021. Then on January 31st, 2021, I have a milestone where I'm like, did I hit that or not? Do I need to get back on the stick, or am I going great, doing very well? So
when you were doing the goals with your friend, would you guys check in periodically? Were you like a support system with each other when you were doing it, or were you just pretty much Han Solo?
yeah, I think we had to. I'm not exactly sure. I remember. This year we're going to do. I think monthly check-ins.
Okay.
So I think we intended to 2 years ago, but we just both got busy and it kind of fell off our radar.
Okay.
And that was sorry.
Did it make a difference? So were you both successful not having those check-ins with each other with your goals?
I was not, I mean, I was a mixed bag. I had some of my goals I accomplished, some of them I didn't.
Okay.
I think what I would say is that the more challenging goals are the ones I didn't achieve without help.
Okay.
The ones I was more excited about just naturally, I
Yeah.
accomplished. And I feel like that's
Okay.
because I had the inner motivation all by myself. I didn't need
Well,
help.
inspiration, we talked about this before, right? Because motivation is like me trying to power myself, and
Right.
that doesn't work. Where inspiration, it's like it's effortless.
Yeah.
I feel inspired. There's no like me trying to start the engine. The engine is started for me. I'm going to go do this thing.
Yeah. No, and I read this book a few years ago called Your Best Year Yet, I think is the title, by Michael Hyatt.
Mhm.
And I remember I was just looking back on that last night because I was working on my goals and I was like,
Yeah.
wait, he had something different than smart. And his thing is smarter. He adds ER, but he also changes realistic to risky.
Oh.
And he adds excited,
Hmm.
excitement or something. And then
Yeah.
I forget what the last thing is. But I was like, oh, I have to be excited because this is where I think a lot of us get off with the New Year's resolutions.
Uh-huh.
And this goes to the whole thing you just said about motivation versus inspiration is like, we're telling ourselves, I should be healthier. I should jog every day, or I should eat healthy
That,
from
that,
now
that.
on. I
Yeah.
should cut out fast food. But that's not something that it's like the idea we have this like we project this idea of us as somebody who doesn't eat fast food anymore and we like that idea of us, but that's not the same as being excited about the current us doing it, right? Because the
Mm.
current us really might like driving home after a hard day of work and
Yeah.
stopping at a fast food place.
Right.
So I was interested in that concept that he was going over. I'm like, I have to get excited because I have one of my goals for this year that I'm pretty sure I'm going to stick with, which is I really want to do this financial thing that is really something from years ago. And I never really settled it and tied a bow on it and got it, resolved.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not on the surface, I'm not excited about doing that at all. So I
Mm-hmm.
had to ask myself when
Mm.
I was writing it out last night,
Yeah.
could I get excited? Is there something that I could get excited
Oh,
about?
I like
And this
that.
relates to, and then I was like, yes, but it's tricky because what I can get excited about is the feeling of if when I get that done, I'm going to feel so free. I'm going to feel
Oh,
so light.
yeah.
I'm going to feel like, thank goodness that's over and I don't ever have to
Uh,
worry about it. It's not
uh,
going to rattle around my head. But
yeah.
that's a challenging.
That doesn't sound like excitement. Like, do you know what I mean?
It
That's,
I understand what you're saying. It really
yeah.
was like I could get to a place where I'm like, yeah, I am really excited about getting that over and done with, but it's still different than excited to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I mean. It's like,
Yeah.
because to me, like inspiration, it goes back to what Wayne Dyer was saying about inspiration is inspired. And it's like, I really feel like spirit just comes in and just infuses me with
Yeah.
willingness. I remember there was something I needed to make a phone call with my business, and I was like, oh, it was on my to do list that morning, and I looked at it, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go make breakfast. And so
Yeah.
I did not want to make this call.
Yeah.
And so this ties in with the whole art of allowing. And so I was in the kitchen, and I often play music when I'm, making breakfast. And I'm in there and I'm listening to something I really love, and I'm making breakfast and I'm dancing, and I don't know, like a half hour goes by, and I'm like, I'm gonna make that call.
Mm,
I made the call. It took like 30 seconds, and it was great. And I was like, oh my God, what just happened?
mm,
That was I was inspired. I wasn't even thinking. The last thing I want to do is make that call. But
yeah.
then I just totally shift my energy. Wasn't even thinking about the call. And then I was inspired because from this place of joy, I was like, oh yeah, I want to make this call. And that is like amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that's really important. I think that's really important. Because I'm thinking about the apartment again. And I remember feeling completely overwhelmed when I got the letter from my housemate. And
Yeah.
like, how on earth am I going to find
And scared? Were you scared?
I was terrified. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, because, Los Angeles still has one of the craziest housing markets, ever. I had been getting really discounted rents compared to the market for
Yeah.
years, and I hadn't really arranged my monthly budget for what I needed for this place. But I had two friends. So I was sort of freaking out for a couple of days. And then I met with two friends of mine, really good friends of mine who know me very well. Both been through many housing searches and both very financially responsible. And they helped me see the path, of like,
So
here are
support.
the action steps you can take that will help you get there. And so I feel like that was a spiritual piece for me. And then I also feel like when I walked into this place, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, it was right up my budget that I had figured out with them of
Mm-hmm.
increasing. And
Mm-hmm.
it was literally everything I wanted. I wanted a much bigger place. I
Did
wanted it to
you
my
write down what you wanted
I
prior to?
did. This gets, oh man, I feel like we keep fishtailing back and forth. This gets into the vision thing, because when I talked to my two friends, they said, before we meet with you, we would like you to write down in very specific detail what you really want and put the price aside for now, and put like, wait, put all these factors that you might tell yourself, oh, well, that means that I can't have what I really want. Just what part of LA do you want to live in? How big do you want? What kind of kitchen do you want? That kind of thing. Do you want closet space? All these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I wrote that down.
It's powerful. I've done it myself.
Yeah.
It works like it's magic. It's not magic. It's intention. It's art of, it's a law
So
of
I think
attraction.
like if I'm so I think that for me that's working as a pretty good example, because the goal is to get a new apartment that I love. And it's like the vision, which really did start 5 years earlier.
And they do.
Right. But
From
it
this
got more.
contrast that you had, right? Of
Right,
like,
exactly.
I don't have enough space. I don't like
Yep.
this room is too small. In
Yep.
that moment, you knew what you wanted. You wanted a bigger place. You wanted to have more freedom. You wanted to have
That's what's
a bigger
interesting is
room.
I think if I had called those two friends 5 years earlier, and they said the same thing, right, we're going to meet with you, write down what you really want, I might have written down pretty close, to what I wrote down 5 years later. So I mean, yeah, so I think the vision kind of has a consistency, but like an action step towards accomplishing the goal and the vision was to get more specific, put something in writing about the vision, like make the vision clear. But that's me writing it down was an action that was me. Like
Mhm.
spirit didn't write the list. I wrote the list,
Right.
but I think that spirit arranged for those two friends to help me.
Yeah.
I think spirit helped me get to this place
Yep.
in a magical
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
because
Like we're
literally,
never
I mean,
alone.
I've had friends look for an apartment in LA for months and months and months and not find anything that's a match
Yeah.
to their
Yeah. And
price
we've
range and what they're looking for.
both
And I
had
found
that
this
with
place.
other things,
This
right?
was the third place I looked at, and I
Yeah.
was done.
Yeah.
Like, my friend said, "Do you want to look at other places just to make sure?" And I'm like, "No, I'm done. This is it."
Yeah, yeah. And you can feel it, right? It comes back to that whole
Yes.
feeling thing. You
Yeah.
feel it. The same thing for me when I was ready to buy a condo and someone said, write down what you want. Write down everything you want. And
Yeah.
so I made my list.
Yeah.
And I thought, I think I probably had that thought, like, I don't think I'm going to find all of that in one thing. And I went on my own and looked like at 8 different condos and
Mhm.
couldn't find anything. And then a friend was a realtor at work and he's like, I'll take you, because I didn't know I couldn't do that on my own. I was
Mhm.
a realtor like shamed me. I'm like, what are you doing? You need to have your realtor here with you. And so
Thanks for
it
the
was
help.
literally the first person, the first place he took me to, I walked in and I loved it. And I was like, well, I could do this and over here. And he's like, it's not yours yet. And I looked at my list, it had everything I wanted and I bought it and I loved it. And
Yeah. So maybe the distinction between, I mean, I'm trying to like, me, I'm a very literal person. I like things in little boxes, and sometimes it's helpful, but a lot of times life is a gray area, and it's much better to be flexible.
absolutely. Even all of this stuff is like
Yeah.
this, but then there's, yeah, it's just,
And I think everybody needs to find their own best way. I guess that's what kind
you're
of,
right.
yeah,
Because what works for you may not work for me, and
that's the
what works
thing.
for me
Yes.
may not work for you. It's like, take what you like,
Mhm.
leave the rest. I think the more life we live, hopefully we get to know ourselves better
Mhm.
and know what works for us and what doesn't. And it's just
So,
about finding our journey, like finding our path is all about that with anything.
so you're a transformational life coach. I was a client of yours for 3 years or so. If I came to you at this time of year and
Mhm.
said, what would you recommend that I do to manifest as much of what I want, as much of what my heart desires into my life in 2021? What would your understanding that you probably develop an understanding of people's particular personalities and preferences and everything, but like if you had to make a general statement, what would you say?
Someone's just coming to me and asking me this question.
Yeah. Well, like if I was your, well, let's use me as an example.
So if you're my
Back when I was your
client,
client, yeah, and I
what would
said
you
I
have
want to,
said?
yeah, I'm leaving it all up to you in terms of, what can I do best to manifest as much of what my heart desires
I
in
think we would do
2021.
a little bit of everything we said today.
Oh, okay.
I think, um, and maybe not so much writing down the goals. I would want to know what it is that they want, and we would talk about that. I remember working with a client, and she wanted something very specifically,
Hmm.
and but sometimes she'd talk about how she didn't have it, and I said, okay,
Hmm.
let's play this game, and I want you to tell me as though you're living it now. Talk to me about it as though you're living it now. And so we would do that in our
Hmm.
sessions periodically. And I don't know if it was a year later, she was literally describing to me an experience she was having. And it was like what she was saying the year before.
Hmm.
And so that's one of the things is like, practicing the feeling of it. And then there's, I have clients who are we focus on just feeling better, self care, being more appreciative, and all these other tools of art of allowing. And we're not even specifically thinking about one of their goals or one of their desires. And then it happens. It just because they're in the
Yeah.
flow and they allow it in. So there's just all these different ways that we
I think
can.
that's what sort of, I think all these personal development folks have nothing but good intent. They just want to help people move forward in their lives. But I think that one of the things people bump into is that um, it's, they put their faith in some, new person's system or something, and they think it's all up to that system. And if they can't get that system to work for them, then they're not going to get what they want out of life. And I think from a law of attraction, higher power, spirit perspective, what my experience is, you can be, as Abraham says, you can be, do, or have anything that you can visualize or desire.
Yeah, yeah,
um, but you may have a unique path to those things, and
exactly.
somebody's personal development goal setting system might work for you, and it might be the opposite of what you need. And
Right.
so it's really like listen to your heart. um, and possibly, I mean, I'm not trying to plug you really hard here, but I mean, that's one of the reasons why it's helpful to have a coach, and it doesn't have to be necessarily a spiritual coach, but some sort of life coach or career coach or whatever you want to focus on can
Yeah.
be
The
helpful because,
support,
yeah,
we were
because
talking
they
about
can help
earlier.
you find what is a good way for you to think about these things, and what is a way that you can determine what you'd like to do in terms of your individual action in order to bring more of what you want into your life. So for some
Yeah.
people, that may just be doing things to be happier because they're really miserable and they're putting out a negative vibration all the time, and they can do all the goal setting you want, and they're not going to
Right.
attract any of it because they're
Yeah.
putting out like, I don't deserve it, the world stinks, blah blah blah.
Right.
Another person might really need like specific things written down with
Yeah.
steps for them to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Understand that
Like
there's a spiritual magic
I'm,
component, but yeah.
and I'm not, there's no coach that is a perfect match for everyone. That's why there's so
Yeah.
many coaches. That's why there's so many teachers, because there's so many different students. And even like this podcast, like some people it's going to really resonate with, and other
Yeah.
people it's going to be like,
Won't be.
what are
Yeah.
they talking about? They're
Yeah.
crazy. And everything in between. And I want to say about what you were talking about all these people who have written these books and want to help people. It's like they found something that worked for
For
them.
them. Yeah.
And so they're sharing it for others because they really believe that if you do this, it's going to work for you.
Mhm.
And what I have found that that's not true. Um, it will work for some and it won't work for others. And some will take what they, what feels right
Mm,
and utilize it. And so, but we need them all because we don't
yeah.
know who it will work for and won't. And again, like you were saying, like you went to Barnes and Noble in another podcast and you walked in and you went there for something else, but that particular card, those particular cards called you,
Yep.
and they've been wonderful for you. And so it goes all back to, how does it feel?
I
And
think yeah, it's really important that you follow your heart and your truth in terms of the method, not just what what you want. I think that's what I'm getting out of this conversation the most is like, if you try one, book on goal setting and it doesn't work for you, don't give up on goals forever.
yeah,
Just understand that that method doesn't work for you.
right,
But there's
right,
another, we all have the ability to attract what we want into our lives. So it's
yeah,
just a matter
yeah,
of, continuing to experiment until you find something that feels right for you.
yeah.
And when you get to that method, that's your method. Stick with it
And then get
because that's,
support,
yeah.
and get support because,
Yeah.
whether it's a coach or a friend or a mentor or a program or what have yous, your mom or dad, whoever, your sister, your brother, cousin, I don't know, but get support if you feel like you need it, because
Yeah.
I know you do. So do I. I have a ton of support. I have a great support system in my life in various, with relationships, with my health,
Mm.
spiritual community, the whole. And I can't, I can't have the life that I want and the life that I have by doing it on my own.
Mm.
Um,
Cool.
so
Well, thank you for this discussion. This is really helpful for me. I mean, I don't think I've solved it 100% for myself,
yeah,
but
I know, right? I don't even think we really went where we wanted to go, but where
yeah,
we went is good.
it helped me because I think my takeaway from this is that I need to trust my heart and my truth as I go through this goal setting process with my friend,
Mhm,
and
mm,
understand that my friend may have a different, my friend may really like the system that we're using, and
mhm,
I may need to adapt it a little bit.
mhm.
I may need
Yeah,
to use it a little differently. And what I need to
yeah,
pay attention to is, when I have this goal, however I've set it,
yeah,
does this feel good? Like, does this feel like, yay, I have this goal written down? Or does this
yeah,
feel like, uh,
yeah,
or like, I don't get it, or this is going to be too hard, or I'm not excited, or whatever,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I really
yeah.
need to, and that doesn't mean I can't accomplish things that are hard or
Right,
unpleasant or something, but it's like, I'm going to have to come at it in a way that works for me.
right. And it reminds me of when Colin and I met years ago, and we knew each other, from a community and kind of in a larger, oh, I've seen her, oh, I know her.
Mm,
But then when that moment where we became friends, I was talking about music and wanting to have my
mm,
nephew teach me how to play keyboard. And I had said, and I'm going to call him this week. And so afterwards, Colin came over and he said, hey, he goes, would you like to get together sometime and play music? And I'm like, because I'm not a musician, Colin is. He's in a band, blah,
I
blah, blah. And
totally
I,
disagree with that, but okay.
okay, yes. And so I was just like, inside, I'm like, I'm not a musician. I don't know how to play music. And he saw the look on my face and he goes, what's that look? And I'm like, I don't know how to play music. Then he's like,
Yeah.
I go, like, basically I said, I'm scared or whatever. He goes, wasn't that usually a good sign? Like, you should do it. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay. And I said yes. And we set a date and he came over and we played music. And that was the beginning of our friendship. and
Yeah.
and it was, so what I'm saying is, I said yes to something I was scared to do,
Yeah.
and I had support from this man standing across from me saying, well, shouldn't you like, and had I said no, I think it's really sad. Because I just got chills all over my body. Had I said
Mhm.
no, we may not have ever created a really beautiful friendship that we've both enjoyed in many ways over the years. I mean,
Yeah.
I get so much out of you as my friend, because we have that similar love for music and spirituality and creativity and stuff.
Mhm.
So So
Well,
it's not.
I think you brought up another really good point along with that though, which I hadn't thought about, which is something I believe is that the universe, higher power, spirit knows the perfect timing for everything. And so if I set a goal and I do all my actions and the goal doesn't come to fruition the way that I wanted to it on the timeline I wanted, instead of beating myself up for that or just obsessing about like, well, I made the goal and but
Or being
like
hard on myself that I
yeah, just
didn't
trusting
complete it.
that the universe is smarter than me and it may know that it's just not the right time for that. And to be open to goals, because I have goals I feel like that are in my heart that I never even tell anybody or write down. And a lot of times those are the ones that come true the most. And I'm always blown away by that. I was like, I
I
didn't even
know.
write that down, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But
Had that
I
happen
think
many
there's an
times.
element to, I don't want to overcomplicate this because we're near the end here, but I think some of us, and myself included, writing the goal down can become resistance because if you have the wrong attitude about how it's going to happen, like I have to do this, it's going to be hard. I have to do it all by myself.
Or I
Ugh,
don't know
I
how,
know I
or
should, but I don't want,
whatever it may be.
like
Yeah.
that's going to put out a lot of resistance into the universe, and the universe is going to respond of like, it doesn't really feel like you really want that thing yet. It feels like you still need to get ready.
Yeah.
So I think that that's like your story about that, about you wanting to play music and have somebody to play music with, and then like very quickly, I show up, I'm like, hey, want to play music? It's like
Yeah.
some people would get stuck and be like, well, no, I was going to go home and write a goal of like, I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
play music and
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
can I do blah blah
Yeah.
blah. And it's like there's sometimes where you set a goal in your heart, and if you're open and you're just welcoming and you're not resisting, you're not putting up a force field, keeping stuff out, your goal will just
Yeah.
happen. And I think
And
that's,
that was the art of allowing too.
yeah,
Because here I was in my joy of like I loved spending time with my nephew and I
yeah,
wanted to learn how to play keyboard and
yeah.
yeah. And then yeah.
And now we're going to have to play the song that you wrote for everyone because
So,
you went on the internet and told everyone you were not a musician, and I have proof to the
oh,
contrary. So
oh shoot. Oh, and I'm happy to say, so I haven't really practiced my keyboard or my drums much at all, but my granddaughter came over there and says, hey, Nano, have you played the keyboard or something? And I had my nephew tune up my guitar Christmas Eve. And I have met someone really creative recently, and he spends a lot of time really focused. And I thought, you know what? And so I got out my guitar last night and just sat on my bed while I was watching a video and just strummed and just played. I'm like, oh my God, my fingers, but it felt so good. It felt so good. So, and it's sitting in my bedroom with my guitar stand. And so it looks really good there. So, yeah.
yeah, and I mean, not to tie it all together, but I mean, that's to me sounds like you had a goal or a vision in your heart of you'd like to get back to playing, and then at the right time, some spirit had something happen in your life where you were brought back to it and it happened. And I think
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's just like
I
no matter
like
what
that
your
better.
relationship with goals is,
Yeah. I
the
like
happier
that.
you can be, the more open you can be, the more in the flow you can be, not stressing about yourself, making everything happen with your own ego and your own will and nobody else and no help from spirit. Like if you can be more just easy flow, happy, like you'll just get more great stuff.
And that just works
So,
for me. I love that
yeah.
better. Yeah.
So I
Love it,
think
love it, love
like
it.
if people would just say, that I would just make this suggestion in addition to whatever resolutions or goals or visions you want to have for 2021, just to have maybe like a meditation where you just, even for 30 seconds, just say, you know what, I'm open to all the wonderful things that could possibly happen to me in 2021.
Yeah. Woo.
Get some
Ow.
affirmation.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Happy New Year, Stephanie.
Happy New Year, Collin. Happy New Year, everyone.
I'm excited about this year and everything we're going to do with the podcast and stuff.
Me
And
too. Oh my
yeah.
God, we're doing it. Oh.
So if they want to contact you, we'll put stuff in the comments. But if they want to contact you, they can reach you at
powerandjoy.com.
and they can reach me at collinworster.com, COLLINWORSTER.com. Thank you so much for listening. If you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, thank you so much for watching. If you're watching us on YouTube, again, if you feel called to like us and subscribe to us, we would greatly appreciate your support. But most of all, just thank you for your time and attention whenever you're watching or listening to this. You're the ones that make this possible, and Stephanie and I are deeply grateful to you.
Yes.
And we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye, Stephanie.